Everyone's Classic DM, and we're back again for another episode of our Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan DM's tour. What we're going to do today, continuing where we left off, is move on from Area 11, which is down here, and move over to Area 12A and 12B. But folks who happen to be jumping on this video now and maybe missed the previous ones, the goal of this series, like I did with the Tomb of Horrors and the White Plume Mountain series last year, is we go through the actual module, we read through the room, we discuss it, we talk about things that don't seem clear, we talk about things that may seem weird to a player, we predict, or based on experience, I've run this module many times, we talk about the kinds of things that players will and won't do, because when these modules were written back in 77 to 1980, the D&D player back then was very different than a lot of the D&D player today. So as whether you're playing with your children, your grandchildren, your spouse, or your friends, your family are coming back to AD&D, you may find that some of the tips and things we talk about here today are very helpful. The first few episodes went through Area 1, and then the second episode went through Area 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is a very nasty area. And then we went to Area 8, then we moved on to Area 9. We talked about the secret passage that connects and is a branching path, which is hidden behind the statue. And we talked at length about the Lord of the Snails Room 11 and the horrible rats and their disease in Area 11. Now we're going to talk about this Area 12A. How would you get there? All right. So if the party had gone behind the hidden statue, we'll pull up our little pictures here, which looked like this in this corridor, and they went this way, which is elevated 4 feet off the ground. You're jumping up 4 feet off the ground. You're crawling through a very 5-foot tall ceiling passageway and moved into here. They would actually have the option of going to the right or going to the left. One thing I want you to pay attention to is changes in elevation, because this next room is full of water. And so depending upon where you're coming from, this way or this way, different things happen. And for those of you who've read the module before, you know what we're talking about. If you don't remember, this last room, room 11, was flooded like a Olympic swimming pool. And this area over here where my cursor is moving around back and forth, this hand was 12 feet deep. You could fall and actually drown if you fell into this area. So as we go to this area here, let's read what the description says, and we'll take it from there. Let's pull that back up for you. All right, so we're looking for this area here, and it's got this tomb of Huracan, the god of the flood. This passageway is slime covered, and a stream of water trickles away from the door. There is condensation on the walls, door, and ceiling, which drips to the party. A quiet sound of dripping and splashing echoes in the corridor. The door is tightly sealed and appears to be warped outward or wedged shut. The door's hinges are mounted on the side. So they're talking about as if you approach from this direction here, okay? Not from this direction here. That's very, very important because the changes in elevation. If you enter the dungeon initially, under the ground, this is all considered, say, 0 elevation. 0, 0, 0, all the way through here, 0, 0, and then going down. And in these old D&D maps, this is about a 10-foot square. So in real life, a riser and a run tread in a house is a 7-inch rise and a 11-inch tread. 7-11 is what we do in architecture, right? We all know that the steps on the U.S. Capitol and other buildings are sometimes monumental, where the tread is really wide. Just assume, to keep it simple, that every tread's about 6 inches up, half a foot up, and then 1 foot over. So in a 10-foot stretch of stairs, it could be, you're talking about something that's maybe at most 4 to 6 feet of rise. But these are symbols, right? They're not going to draw a really, really long passageway with their way they mark maps to indicate that, hey, this is actually 30 feet below. So you don't know for sure the changes in elevation. That's something you should always pay attention to in your adventures when you're running as a DM, because some people can get confused. So use these symbols here and down here as indications of a change in elevation as the elevations work out. Because if you drop down, let's say you drop down 10 feet here, right? Then you step up 4 feet. So now you've only dropped down 6 feet. That means this floor plane here in 12B is 6 feet lower than the floor plane here. And then you have a drop down again. Now, if you came this way, you drop down and then you drop back up. And then what happens here is you've got a doorway. So there's actually an elevation conflict that would need to be resolved at this. If you're building this level in a game engine, you'd be, oh, wait, the floors don't line up. How do I work with this? So keep that in mind as you run the adventure, because what happens in this area when you approach from that side is quite tricky and may not make sense to people who haven't been keeping track of this. The door is difficult to open. Let's just get this highlighted for you. You can see where we are, because it's sometimes hard to follow if you're using a phone, resulting in -1 to any and all attempts to open. So it's hard to open. This difficulty is due to the fact that the room behind the door is entirely filled with water, which has bowed and wedged the door. Those listening to the door will hear a slight splashing and gurgling if they hear anything at all. Now, there's no rules for that, right? You need to make those kind of rules up. Back in the old AD&D days, it's like a 1 in 6 chance or a 2 in 6 chance, or just let them hear it. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. Opening the door will release a wave of water, which will wash the party down the passage they have come, right? And let's go up to the top section up here to read where it carries over. Here we go. And there is a 2 in 6 chance of catching hold and stopping oneself if a character is washed all the way to the court of unpronounceable, okay? He or she will be swept into the moat and must check for drowning with a plus 10% chance. Those who do not sink will be stunned. If precautions are taken to maintain their position in the hall where the wall of water comes crashing out, the party will suffer only 0 to 3 points of damage and will be stunned. Objects carried in hand will be dropped and washed down the hallway, etc. Not that big of a deal. Just make sure you've taken care of the change of elevation, because if you open this big door, and they're mostly all stone doors, they're basically saying that the water will wash you all the way down this passageway into here, but it depends what happened with this door, right? If the party opened these stone doors and they just left them open, then the water would wash into here, because this is much lower elevation, and then flood you into this room. And this is the area that's talking about possibly drowning you, okay? So keep all that in mind. It's nothing really bad. No one's really going to die. No one's usually going to drown. But if you come from this direction, we have a different description, but it's kind of covered with 12B. So let's go ahead and jump into that. In summary, just keep track of the elevation changes. It's not that big of a deal, right? So now we talk about this area here. This is the other section you read to the players. This hall is strewn with mud and flotsam. Water gathers in the center of the corridor and flows west. Remember, on the map, north is going to be to the left in this version of the map here. You see the north arrow here? Okay, so west is going to be this way, and north is going to be to the top of the image here of a map. To a closed door, the passage ends in a set of double doors to the east. The doors are heavy bronze-bound wood, each with a handle and a keyhole. In the shadow at the western end of a stone block has shifted out of place. Open the door of the tomb will reveal a small chamber with stairs leading up and out of it. This is information for you as a DM. A pool of water fills the entire chamber, and access across the room is only the top 3 inches of the door lintel may be discerned. What they're talking about here is if you open this door here, right, and you go down these steps, you see a room that's full of water, and the top of the door here, the lintel, is barely discernible. So there's a big change in elevation between. So this must easily be at least 10 feet deep. So just assume that every 10-foot square with 10 feet of steps, that every single one of the steps is pretty much a foot up, and you've got 10 feet of drop. That helps you work out the elevation changes throughout the whole module relatively carefully, except for this 4-foot step up, but then it's a 4-foot step back down. So this hallway would be the same elevation as this hall. I know I'm hyper focusing on that, but it might be a point of confusion. And one of the things you don't want to do is have a confusing situation where players feel like you don't understand the geometry of your own map. All right, so the door can be opened from this side by applying average by not bashing it. This section here that I've got highlighted is talking about what happens if you come in here, jump in the water, and try to open this door. Otherwise, there's nothing there. It's just full of water. And you read the description of the door on one side, and it's this buckling door, and the other side, they only talk about the door lintel. A lot of the description of the doors of the dungeon, most of them are stone. So maybe you want to think about giving some more detail there. Are they metal doors? Some of them were made out of bronze and brass and things like that. So think about those details. For me as a DM, I always love to add a little bit more. Like, is this a puzzle? Do we need to drain the water? And what happens if we drain it? These are great opportunities to add, a hidden passageway that connects into here, or another tomb with treasures in it. So far, we haven't really found where there's anyone buried here. It's like the Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan with a lot of animal world characters that are associated with Ulman mythology, but there's no real tombs just yet, except for that vampire room in Area 7, which was way up here, right? In the very early part of the module. And that's almost like someone's been trapped. It's not even like, oh, this is a great god and a representative of a god. Let's pay homage to him, right? Okay, so now we're in this corridor here, and we're going to come to this room. This room will require a lot of conversation, and we'll probably stop the video after we cover this room because it's the Nereid room, right? So let's go ahead and jump over to that. And they're a classical creature from mythology. Even though a lot of us think of the Nereid as something that's only ever in D&D, it's been in classical mythology for eons. So once again, this is called the child of Zat-Zelaha, bat god of the underworld. So this is not really what you think it is, but these descriptions, be sure to know when to read them. Approaching this room, A faint melodious voice can be heard singing. The voice seems female and sweet. It either seems or it isn't, but it is difficult to tell whether it's someone singing or the echoing of dripping water in a great cavern. This is a great encounter for people that have never played it before. For people that played it before, they're going to be mums the word. It'd be kind of funny. The other players might pick up on the fact that you've got a player that go, oh, yeah, it's the Nereid room. I remember this female voice thing. God, watch out. I don't know what's going on here, but it's crazy. All right, so they have an illustration for here. This is back in the day when these types of illustrations, when you're a teenage kid, you're looking at these, you're like, oh my goodness, what? I've never seen that kind of stuff before. So this is an Errol Otis picture of the Nereid with the shawl. So in a modern day, you probably don't want to show that to her. She's not completely, naked or anything, but you may find that a little scantily clad for your younger generation, right? Let's get back to the actual gameplay here. The characters, they look around the corner or peer through the keyhole. That's what they would see in the room. The room is lit by a strange soft light which illumines a section of sandy beach. Beyond the beach is a pool of water framed by a crystal cavern. The light seems to flow from everywhere. The pool and the walls glisten with a soft moonlight. But the most arresting thing in the room is the singer. Sitting on the beach in front of the crystalline pool is a beautiful nude woman. She is young and slim with long golden hair and pale white skin. Her flesh seems to radiate a soft silvery light, and her hair is a golden aureole, which means like a halo. I probably pronounced that word wrong. Since she's singing a strange melody in an unrecognizable language, she is singing a strange melody in an unrecognizable language. On the shore by her side is a shawl, white as the froth of the waves, but in the picture, the shawl is on her. Apparently cast aside in languor. After finishing her song, she slips into the water in a long arcing dive. So that's if someone's peeking and she doesn't see them. Now, if the party's like banging on the door and trying to open a door, this is what they're going to get instead, right? They may not wish to spy in the room and just enter it. If the party bursts into the room, there's a surprise squeal and a splash, meaning that you're trying to push the door open and she's escaped from view before you've even seen anything, okay? So then you're just getting a description of just the room. Let's do that, and then we'll go back and look at the map and talk about this. One half of this room is filled with a pool of phosphorant water fed by a stream from the southern corridor. On the far side of the pool is a set of doors. The apartment, once again, the room, is floored with a white sand and broken rock, and the walls are fastened with crystallized minerals. On the beach rests a bit of white fluff in the shape of a shawl. Little can be seen in the water save for a few fronds of seaweed, nor is the bottom visible. Abruptly, a golden head breaks the water, and a silvery laugh is heard. So this is the creature, it pops his head up out of the water. If you go to the back of the module, they have, the monster entry for the Nereid, which is about here. And it kind of has this little picture right here with the crystalline wall and the shawl on the shore and the Nereid looking at you. And it's a good description of what they are. They're not a real dangerous, going to kill you enemy on paper mathematically. Only if someone tries to kiss them, they'll have a chance of being drowned. And we'll read more about that because they give you all the information about this creature, which is a creature from the elemental plane of water. It's not a run-of-the-mill normal monster. So let's go down here. Okay. And I promised I would pop the map up again, so let's go ahead and do that too. So we're up here in Area 13. So these are the doors that people normally come into. You may remember in the Hermit Crab / Under the Sea Crawfish room that there was this door, you couldn't open it because of mud, but the water from this room is trickling in and feeding it. So this room is being refilled with water, and this is a pool that someone could swim in, and this is a sandy beach. The walls are a crystalline, which is kind of strange because everything else is a stone dungeon. So why is it crystalline? That's just to give it more of a sense of magical. Maybe the way the Nereid wants the environment to have these coral or crystalline designs and shapes on the wall. The door's not really centered on the room, but this door over here is centered. So here's where you start talking about this creature and the first time you actually encounter it as a DM. So it's AC 10, unarmored, hit dice 4, relatively low, because remember the hall, the Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan, the pre-generated characters are not high level. They don't have epic gear on or anything. Only 18 hit points. Number of attacks, 0. Defense, damage, none. A being of pure water, right? An agent of Camazotz, the undead god. Though she is chaotic evil, she possesses an insidious and clever mind hidden beneath her alien beauty and seeming naivety. She will retreat from close combat and conceal herself in the water. Out of the water, she'll assume the form of a beautiful woman. However, in the water, she is 95% undetectable, and then only as a golden mantling of angel seaweed, for she is virtually transparent therein. All right? So this is the part here. back in the day we were playing D&D, there were a lot of female players with you, and sometimes females were playing female characters and male were playing male characters. It wasn't very often that we would have a D&D game where fellows were playing female characters. That's something that kind of popped up later during playing MMOs and video games. Didn't happen as much. But even so, men characters, particularly vulnerable to this creature, for her naked form is poison to all men, and those looking at her will find themselves incapable of causing her harm. Her actions will appear to men as casual flirtations. Male characters' only possible means of offense is to cast a charm monster upon her. Okay? Men could sit and watch her antics all day. They're so graceful and enticing. Males have been known to attempt to pursue the nereid and seek her embrace. This, however, can be met with disastrous results, for though her kiss brings sweet bliss, it may also bring a watery doom. Each time a kiss is forced from a nereid, because she's loath to give one, I mean, she doesn't want to, the character must save versus breath weapon at -2 or instantly drown. Another insta-death thing. If the character succeeds, he will experience the ultimate in pleasure, but if he fails, then his lungs will take fire, his throat will seize up, and the grayness will overtake his senses as the end comes. So she does have an attack, and this is this part here you need to understand. The motivations behind running this type of a character. If you're an agent of the bat god of Camazotz and you're here frolicking around doing what you want to do, not sure what you're eating, you're a creature from the elemental plane of water. Are you shifting back and forth between the plane of water and the material plane, which is the plane that AD&D takes place in Greyhawk? Her only physical attack is her spittle, which blind its target for 2 to 12 rounds. So you roll 2d6 and get the number, multiply it times rounds, which is going to be minutes. Although this venom may be washed away. So if the spittle hits you, like she spits at you, remember she's really a creature of water, like the creature in the movie The Abyss. And when they're way down underneath the sea, there's this elemental form of water that shapes up and makes faces and moves around. Like that would be probably the nereid's actual form, but it can make itself look like a woman with skin and everything, all this glowing radiance, right? Maybe some kind of mimicry going on. They never talk about a nereid looking like, a mermaid or merwoman or anything like that. It's always like a naked female, right? So that spittle's range of 20 feet. A roll to hit must be made to determine the target's blinded. And remember, a 4-hit dice monster is going to use a monster hit dice table, have a tough time hitting someone. If you do get hit, they're going to be attack at -4, and AC and saves are reduced by 4. So when you say someone's AC is reduced by 4 and you have armor class 2, you actually are going to add 4 and make it armor class 6. And if your saving throws are reduced by 4, you roll your d20 and you reduce your roll, meaning you're less likely to roll above because you're trying to roll above for saving throws in AD&D. All right, let's go down here. The nereid, being a creature from the elemental plane of water, has some control over the water in the pool which she layers, meaning this room. She can make the water heave in great waves. So imagine big crashing waves, slowing your movement to 1/4 of normal. So if you can move, 60 feet and a melee round, think of that being reduced all the way down to almost like 15 feet, okay? Or cause the pool to boil and froth, increasing your chance to drown by 10%. There's drowning rules in Area 11, which is specific to this dungeon. Waves may be made to crash against the walls with such a roaring, the characters do not muffle their ears, will be deafened for 3 to 24 rounds. If you are deafened from this thunderclap for 3 to 24 minutes, that's pretty crazy. You wouldn't be able to talk or yell to each other. You wouldn't be able to hear yourself speak. I would even make it where someone's doing a verbal somatic material component spell, that the verbal part, you can't say the words properly and the spell screws up. You might want to make an intelligence check, like roll 4d6, your intelligence are under, to see if you can actually pull the spell off because you think of the words in your head. That's all up to you. That's not rules as written in here. When someone's deafened, it isn't that big of a deal. You just have to tell the players at the party, like, everyone's deafened, you can't hear anything, right? Lastly, the nereid may form watery shapes, which may be no more than pleasant entertainment or may become a substantial defense. The latter, the defense, takes the forms of watery serpent or a fist, which also strikes a 4-hit dice monster and can hit for 1 to 4 points of damage when it hits. You might want to make there's multiple ones of these, but it only says it takes the form of one of them. So one, big fist of water thing coming up and hitting and slapping people. What you might want to do is have it come up, rise, and hit someone and damage them, and then splash into water again. So you can't tell where it is. It's hard to swing at it. So you might want to change. The players might change their focus, trying to capture or kill the nereid or whatever they want to do. Misses will strike as a wave of water, cause no damage. Only one such attack may be raged each round. So that's pretty clear. So she can do all these interesting things. What's her goal and motivation? To hassle you, give you a hard time? Are players really going to fall for the whole, I want to try and kiss her? I don't think it's going to happen in the modern world. Maybe back when you're little kids that might happen, but you wouldn't. When you're a little kid playing, it's a monster, right? It's a monster in a dungeon. It's a creature. And you're not at 13, 14, you're 15 years old. You're not thinking it's a naked woman. Let's try to grab her and kiss her. So it's kind of weird. You know, the TSR guys wrote this module. Maybe they're 24-year-olds and maybe they thought that was hilarious. But for the little kids we're playing, it's not really all that funny. So the motivation behind the trickery of the character doesn't really hold true in a modern day. Instead, what you might want to do, since she's chaotic evil, is have her do everything in her power to prevent people from moving to the next area, right? Okay. This is very cool. Remember, you know, if you knew a demon's name, you could control it and things like that. The Nereid's greatest weakness lies in her shawl, for it contains her soul. If the shawl is destroyed, she will dissolve into formless water. If a character seizes the shawl, he or she will find they can understand and control the creature. These are always tricky. Possessing the Nereid shawl will permit the holder to command her, though she responds more out of fear than desire and will not inform the party of their hold over her. She will not attack if a character holds her shawl, although she might churn up the water to slow the movement. The Nereid will attempt to coerce the holder into giving it back. She may even reveal the location of her treasure in the pool, but will not inform the party of the presence of her pet, an eel. If the shawl is tossed to her, the Nereid will pull it beneath the waters and laughingly take up the attack. Very tricky to handle it. That's a really interesting part of the whole encounter is the shawl. Most people don't really think of the shawl being anything but just a prop. It'd be interesting to see if any of your players ever understand what to do on that. Let's go down here. Now remember, this is assuming that you didn't, you know, she saw you first. After spying on the intruders, the Nereid will cause the waters to rise up like a great serpent, hoping to trick the party and believing there's a water weird in the pool. The water form strikes for 1 to 4 points of damage. If the party cannot be frightened away when they assist on sullying her pool, she will attempt to lure the males into the pool while blinding the females with her spittle. If this ploy fails, her last resort is to summon Chalk, her pet electric eel, AC 9, which is low, only hit dice 2, hit points 10, 1 attack, 1 to 3 damage bite, which may use an electric bolt, a jolt once per hour, which would be 6 turns, okay? The jolt causes 3 to 24 points of damage, which is 3d8. Roll it, 8-sided die 3 times. If the party's within 5 feet of the eel, 2 to 16 if between 5 and 10 feet, and only 1 to 8 if within 10 to 15 feet away. The eel will take normal damage from thrusting weapons, only half damage from slashing, as the water will deflect the blow, because it's going to be in the water and trying to zap people. It's not really jumping up and biting you unless you're underwater. I've actually caught an electric eel before while fishing when I was a kid. It's pretty creepy looking. When summoning her pet, the Nereid will rise up and call out Chak's name loudly, and then the waters begin to rise and heave and boil, and the watery form of a man with an elephantine head, wearing elaborate headdress and holding a trident, will rise up out of the waters. The Nereid, of course, is manipulating. This is fantastic. Manipulating the water and Chak. Let's go to the last section here. Her pet electric eel will rise near the surface and strike when the watery god levels its trident at a character. The eel will not be affected by the shawl and may attack on its own. The Nereid may aid her pet by catching a swimming character's legs and pulling them under if she rolls a successful to hit versus AC 6, stunning the character for 1 round. The Nereid may not leave her pool, and if away from the water for more than 1 turn, which is 10 minutes, she begin to lose 1 hit point per round per minute. Movement in the water for the party is half normal speed anyway, and attempts to swim the pool should check for drowning rules. The pool's 12 feet deep towards the north side, about the same depth as like a swimming pool in the United States at the deep end. Quickly rises to 4 to 5 feet deep around the edges. At the deepest part of the pool is a grotto hidden beneath a bed of kelp. In this cave are 6 golden statues worth 85 gold each and a golden mask worth 170. Also lying in a cache are 2 crystal scroll cases worth 20 gold apiece. That's the cases. The waters destroyed the scrolls that's inside. A silver idol, 17 gold, which is really a bottle holding a potion of treasure finding, and a pair of bronze bracers of defense, AC 5. Bracers of defense are very, very helpful for the magic users who don't get to wear any armor. If they get rings of protection, it always stacked in my game. In 3.0 and 3.5, they had all kinds of like different ways to calculate deflection and things like that. AC 5, you got protection. You could have a brooch of protection, a ring of protection. Some people I played with over the years said you can't stack multiple protections. Like say you have a ring of +2 protection and a brooch, that protection, that the +2 in the brooch, the +2 in the ring don't stack to become +4. So therefore, it's up to you how you want to handle that. But Bracers Defense AC 5 is pretty nice. In the old days of AD&D, it's very rare to have any player, up to level 10 to have an AC below -2. It would need to have magic shield and magic armor to be able to hit that. So that's a pretty decent magic item. So The wonderful part about this is that from the DM side, you're thinking to yourself, okay, you got the Nereid in the water. The players aren't going to try and kiss her, right? That's probably not going to happen. She's going, if you enter the room, she's going to do everything in her power to scare you, right? She's going to hide in the water where she's 95% undetectable. She can be moving around like the Predator did in The Predator in the Jungle, right? Remember that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and all translucent and shimmering and reflecting light because she's a true creature of water. You could use a description from the movie The Abyss to try to get a sense of how the fists could come up out of the water where she's controlling the water and attacking the party. You know, you probably don't want to have any of that water stuff happening on this little trickling stream. Just keep it all to this 4 or 5 foot, 12 foot deep section over here, which is the part they're talking about where the cache is. That could be a very fun fight. Remember, this is a 40 foot wide by what, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 50 foot deep room with these chamfered edges. Could be a really exciting encounter. The fact that there's a door at the opposite end is kind of weird because this room is flooded, but if you open that door, does the water come pouring out? But it's a really neat encounter. I think it's super creative. I love the whole Aztec fakery happening here where she makes the watery god rises up and levels its trident at a character when reality she's just a little eel swimming around. So that's pretty crazy. Really fun area. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next area. We've got 26 minutes in the video so far. I like to keep them at 30. The next area is this hall that's flooded, and let's just show you where that is. That's this area here flooded with steps that are going out and up. So this is going to be interesting to see how this elevation change happens. So half of this corridor is flooded. The water is waist deep and cold. A set of stairs rise up out of the water on the eastern leg, and the corridor ends in a set of bronze doors. The floor of the water-covered portion is quite slippery, +1 for your chances of slipping. Thus, a roll of 5 or less on 2d6 indicates a fall. There are keyholes in both sets of doors, but the doors are unlocked. So there's really nothing about that area that's exciting at all. This area here is much more complicated. We'll save that for the next video. You might want to also be sure to go and read the actual entry for the Nereid at the very back of the module, which is about here where the gibbering mouther is. A lot of it's repeated. A lot of it says the same kind of things. It starts down here. Number appearing 1 to 4, 1 in this case. Movement's pretty quick. That's movement in water. It doesn't really say like 12 in water and X on land. On land, if it can take the form of a woman, I don't believe there's any description that says that if the Nereid's out of water, she can't move. It just talks about her losing hit points over time. Treasure type is X. No attacks, no damage per attack. So it's pure water. It's not going to punch you in female form or wield a dagger and stab you, and chaotic either neutral or evil. So the thing here is these honeyed ones consume this human form when not in the water. It's cool classical mythology, but in the modern day, you know, those traps aren't going to be like you have with the harpies and things like that in classical mythology. These antics and stuff are typical folklore that's related to this creature. If you look, just type in Nereid on the internet, it even tells you how to pronounce the name of the word. The venom can be washed away. It's not that big of a deal. It's the whole control of the water thing that's really interesting and scary. The deafening is pretty bad. Pulling someone under while their pet attacks them. They even say here in the section in the back is there's 85% chance likely to have a pet. Sorry about that. I like triple clicking this crap. A stingray, a dolphin, a squid, a snake, giant octopus. Those could be really, really interesting. A very acute otter. So the Nereid is an interesting creature because it's not your typical, it's got 50% magic resistance. That's not even mentioned. That's pretty nasty. Very intelligent. Doesn't talk, right? Really cool creature. Really interesting to run as a dungeon master. So far in the module, we haven't encountered anything too ruthless or brutal except for this vampire, quasi-vampire over here. This is exciting and interesting because it's such a trick. It has that White Plume Mountain kind of vibe to it. And as always, do you want to tie lore into this next chamber before you move to area 15, which is down, let's go up to I think we're about on page 12 or so. Let's go to here. Let's get back here. 29, sorry, we jumped too far. 17. Here we go. 13. And the next area is the Great Hall. Piles of rubble and debris scattered, etc. We'll do that in the next video. So this is another illustration I'll just give you a sneak peek of that when you may remember it. This picture is another Tomb of Horrors type of a room where there's things on the wall and trickery at the end of the hallway. We'll do that in the next video. But overall, you know, you can see that the theming in here is, it's cool. It's interesting. There's a lot of connectivity to water, a lot of connectivity to Camazotz. The players probably won't pick up this connectivity, they don't really talk about parlaying or having a conversation with the Nereid. I wouldn't think you would be able to, like you are with the Lord of Snails and with the other creatures, but it's a really neat encounter, and I think you'd have a lot of fun running it. Okay, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll leave that a short one for today, and we'll pick things up with the Great Hall Area 15 next. We'll talk to you soon.